Hi everyone, welcome again to a week. We missed last week. Hi Liz, how you doing?
Hi, Deni. Good to see you.
Here we are with another conversation, and today I've been thinking about this a lot lately. This topic, so I'm so glad, Liz, that you are open to talking about it. And it came from a conversation I had with a young, newly graduated artist, straight out of university here, around visual art and music as art or a listening art, and how those two worlds are different and how they relate to each other. And I guess to expand on that a little bit, um, art, he was complaining about how the art world seems a bit small in terms of the people that appreciate going to galleries and appreciate going to shows and exhibitions. Whereas when you look at music, it can be appreciated by a lot of people. Anybody can turn on a radio and hear a song. And what was really interesting about the conversation is that it went right around in a circle to him then talking about needing to have some kind of education before you walk into a gallery to really be able to
That's
fully
funny.
appreciate art. And it really struck me as this interesting thing, and how I think we're breaking away from
Mm.
art being so elite, and certainly for me, wanting it to be a lot more acceptable to go into a gallery and to not need to understand in order to appreciate. I'm kind of interested in your thoughts,
Mm.
your
That's
initial
a great
thoughts.
subject.
Yeah,
So I don't know that I can really talk very much into the musical aspect because I'm not musical, but it seems to me if you quantify what an artist is, in my mind, it's somebody that's creating something from nothing, maybe. That is unique to the individual. But then music, you might be playing a cover version of somebody else's that you didn't make it up. That still means you're an artist because you're playing the music, I guess. As far as needing an education, and the elitist galleries are definitely elite. And even as artists, I don't know about you, but I'm intimidated walking into some of them. And I've got to do a day in New York and go and visit them. But they could be pretty snooty in themselves. The whole atmosphere. And I'm sure when you talk to somebody, they're great. But there's nobody else in there. You sort of, it feels as though you need to know what you're talking about. So it would be lovely in lots of regards to make that more mainstream. But then you lose this sort of exclusivity or the uniqueness or the special, individuality of art if it becomes, mass production. I remember I had a line of kids products years and years ago, and there was this big thing about do we do a brand to sell to Target, which would mean that where my original brand was much higher in the market. If I did a Target, I would lower everything. And we decided that wasn't where we wanted the brand to go. So it's a bit like that with art in a way, I think. It would be lovely to make it more accessible. I mean, I think there are more and more places that all these are minted and Saatchi, and there's so many great online places now that you can easily access it. You just got to, I guess you've got to want to know where to look.
that makes me wonder whether the art world has almost separated into the kind of elitist gallery world and then the more accessible art, that I think in a way social media has opened as a path for artists that, because what I'm finding is a lot of artists that I know that have gone through the art school and are now, producing work. And often I find that they don't have websites, they don't have a funnel to get their work to their buyers except for galleries. So
Right.
it kind of amazes me, given the fact that I sell off my website and I sell off social media, that they have given themselves this really fine tunnel, and that they're relying on someone else
Yeah.
so much in order to get their work out there.
That's really interesting, isn't it? I not having gone through art school as a fine artist, I don't really have a reference point for that, but it feels a very limited outlet. I mean, there's only so many galleries around, and that's a very, very specific direction to go with your work. It means you have to price it at a certain point. You have to, rely on the gallery to tell you the type of work that they want. I would imagine that, I mean, for me, that I've not wanted to do that. I'm still resisting it a little bit, but it's probably inevitable. But I am surprised that it feels much more free when you can sell as we do on our websites and on Instagram. There's nobody telling us what prices we have to charge and how many we have to produce in 6 months and things like that. But I guess they're coming out with the idea that it's a really exclusive product that they are producing. Maybe they'll change their mind after being in the real world for a year. I don't know.
Absolutely. And that's kind of like the business of art and being an artist. And I think that these two worlds are having to come together in order for artists to live and make money and survive, like that struggling artist thing was so very real. And I think that that's been thrown on its head at the moment. But it also kind of makes me wonder about studying art. And you and I are both, trained. We're both creatives. We've both been through study of art in different ways, or creativity. Where are you with the? It's taken me all this time really to want to think. I think to myself, wow, I'd love to go back and go to fine art school. I would just love that. Like,
me too. I would do. So I've thought that so many times. It's just so expensive here, and maybe I should go back to England and do it. But yeah, I would love to do that. I couldn't have done it. I mean, my circumstances when I was at art school, I wanted to get a job. I knew I wanted to be in the creative world. I needed some independence, so graphics was a very sort of safe option. I also didn't have the internal world to be able to paint from, or the financial infrastructure to be able to launch myself in a career that I didn't even know whether I would be getting a paycheck or, a lot of the people that were in fine art had a very privileged background back then in my art school anyway. But now, I would love to, although, there's certain techniques, and my studio neighbor, Mona Brody, he's an amazing artist, used to teach at Pratt, and she does these incredible techniques with all kinds of really amazing products that she creates, these glazes and these sort of exquisite. They are so exquisite. She sells to high-end galleries. And she not that she taught everything that she does, but she taught a lot more techniques. And I've learned along the way. I've been painting with acrylics for a long time, but there's still a lot more, so much more I'd love to learn, and also just have the complete open door to just create without any external pressures of, holding things together from, in a financial realm, just to be a kid again and just indulge in that. I would love to do that.
Be a kid again, as in to go into it like that art school thing, but also to have the brain that you do, to know that what you're learning is, take in what works and leave out what doesn't. And in some ways, I wonder whether art school should be left till you get to a certain age where you have the strength to know the crap, as in, that needs to be filtered. Because that's why I say these kids come out, I think, God, they haven't filtered that stuff. They don't know that there is a filter needed.
Yeah, that's a little disappointing, because you would hope in this day and age that they would come out with a more of an understanding about how to survive in the world commercially, and not just rely on galleries. So I'm surprised, disappointed, but it would be hard to find, let me rephrase this. It would be lovely to find teachers or professors that could teach mature students without being too prescriptive about the way they teach, and, you know, sort of just maneuver us from wherever we needed. But egoically, you know, we don't have to follow. We're given a lot more freedom. I mean, I guess it would be a master's program where you do define your own course. But it would have to be a good teacher that wasn't very instructional, you know, wasn't directive, and that would allow for individuals to really show up.
And so tell me what your thoughts are, is how important do you think that study is, that study of an art practice, knowing the basics, you know, having an understanding of art appreciation, being able to look, you know, at a piece and pull it apart symbolically or in whatever ways. How important do you believe that is?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, there's some great artists I know that didn't go to art school, so I don't know that it matters at all that you went, that you know, have that qualification behind you. I sort of look at it a little bit like skiing. I didn't grow up skiing. I didn't, you know, when you see little tiny tots on the slopes, their balance is great. They grow up, they know how to ski intrinsically, intuitively. Their body just moves in the right way. I learned to ski when I was 27, and although I'm pretty athletic, it wasn't, my body was like, oh, I don't know. So it was never a natural thing for me. I think what I'm grateful for is that I had the opportunity to really indulge at an early age. So it just got into my cells, you know, understanding and appreciation and a confidence of knowing that I knew how to draw, or I knew how to create certain things, or I knew that confidence was really helpful in defining me and my personality for whatever that was worth. You sort of relearn everything when you leave art school anyway. So it's the foundation courses, and my high school was absolutely brilliant. We learned so much in high school. It was, I mean, I think I got so much of my understanding and appreciation from my art teachers when I was sort of 14 to 18. And then I went to a really good art school. And so I had great professors, and I made sure I did a lot of cross-section of drawing and things. But I don't know that it matters to produce brilliant art now. I mean, I'm a very different person to how I was at art school. But I definitely pull from a deeper well, having had the experience that I had, whether it's just based on a confidence or whether it's based on some false set of beliefs, I don't know, but I still pull from it on a very sort of cellular intuitive level. How about you?
Well, what I'm finding when I'm in my art practice at the moment is there's two sides to me, two very distinct sides that I recognize. And that is this part where I create and I don't think about the outcome. I completely get out of my way and I create, and I'm just like in it. And, you know, I got followed paths, and then I look at the piece at the end and I think, oh God, I can so see what that is, and I can so read where that comes from. Now, if I look at it from is this pleasant to look at point of view, or are those colors working, or is the composition working? I can look at it and say, well, you know, getting too much into my left brain and thinking, no, I need to fix this and I need to do that. And then there's this part of me I want to create art that's pleasant to look at. And so there's, and I notice when I'm painting that I go easily off into one or other. Yeah. And both are quite relevant to me. You know, it's relevant to me to create art that's beautiful. I love putting colors together in really beautiful, pleasing ways. And then there's this part of me that completely wants to express itself in whatever comes out. Like that's this raw, real, you know, weird, sometimes really basic, sometimes young, sometimes innocent, a way that when I look at it, I think, oh my God, imagine what it would look like if I put this out there, because, people might just think a 2-year-old painted it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so raw. And then I there's this battle that goes on, battle or question or place that I sit between these two worlds.
Yeah.
Does that ring a bell for you?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's it can be a struggle some days to turn one down, you know, in allow the other to come up in volume. But it is very handy as well. I mean, I don't know that I would say beautiful art is in the eye of the beholder, I think. I mean, beautiful art. Good art can be quantified when you have an understanding, I think, a more inherent understanding of what makes a good piece. And that's understanding design, composition, value, all those principles that go into the theory of a good piece. It doesn't necessarily, it can have all the principles, but it might not necessarily be beautiful, right? So beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Don't think you need any training to do that. And it's it feeds your soul to produce beautiful art. But where am I going with this? I don't know where I'm going with this, but it does, I don't know that you have to have a degree of or a education to do that. But with me, those two, and I know exactly those two sides of my personality, I do really value my design understanding and my design background in terms of how to reach clients, how to understand, if I'm doing commissions, going in and looking at the environment, and I love problem solving, and I love creating a piece for a space, and lots of artists would throw their arms up in horror thinking it's being really sacrilegious to do that. But I love being able to use that client understanding and to generate art that still is me, but it's filtered through the different side of my brain to let's just create for the sake of seeing where it goes, the experimentation. But I think as you become more commercially savvy, it's even harder to stop yourself from trying to create end products and that are sellable. I'm doing a whole load of work at the moment, and while I'm in the concept, I don't like any of the pieces that I'm doing. I wouldn't hang any on my wall. Am I going to produce a whole collection of work that is in the concept but not necessarily marketable? I don't know. That's what I'm sort of coming to terms with at the moment as I'm producing more and more work that I'm going, oh, really? But it's interesting in some regards because I'm still finding my vocabulary. I'm still finding my marks that I want to make that they're not necessarily pieces I want to hang on the wall.
Yeah. And I find myself going down that path where I almost start producing something and I think, oh, I really like this process and I really like the way that this is coming together and it's really pleasing. And it's like, I could just keep producing like this and probably sell heaps. I do this all the time. Then I think, how would that feed me? How would that feed my soul? Not how would that feed me physically? But it's this. I can notice again. I notice this tug of war between being commercial and being seen to create this type of art, and then also this other part of me that wants to just not worry about that and create whatever. But I think with that attitude, you've almost got to think, I don't need my art to be something that brings me in money. There is this money piece involved if you want to do art full time, right? It's just the way it is. And so then there has to be this commercial element about it. And where does that get in the way of us creating really authentic art?
Maybe it's a mixture of the two. Maybe we produce work that can be really sellable and is on trend, on point with color schemes that are working and themes that are of interest to people, and and your brand has a saleable, you know, and you hone that and you can market that. And then you have also your other side that's much more experimental and more less commercial, less contrived, or, you know, just a bit more out there. But you look at artists like Llewellyn Skye, who seems, you know, there are some great artists out there, and she's one of them in my mind that has combined those two really beautifully. So her work is exquisite. Her colors are exquisite. I love what she does. It's so her. And, you know, there are a lot of people that do sort of similar types of things that have maybe learned from her, but, you know, she's honed that whole market that looks really beautiful and that's really her, but she can just keep on producing those kind of things and know that they just fly off the, you know, out of her hands, because they're so beautiful and commercial. So, you know, that's a sweet spot. If you can combine those two, that's wonderful.
Yeah. I noticed you said earlier, Liz, that you can feel uncomfortable at times walking into galleries. That's such an interesting thing, because I think that would be across the board, that people feel that way. And I think I listened to a podcast once that was talking about what is it that makes you feel the most uncomfortable about walking into a gallery. And actually the answer was really surprising. It wasn't about not knowing about art or being asked a question that they couldn't answer. It was actually what to wear.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Like, what do you wear to
I can understand, because it's also, I mean, certainly the galleries in New York are so beautiful and pristine. But, you know, I was at this gorgeous wedding this weekend, and I don't think she'd be watching, but anyway, I was introduced to somebody, wanted to introduce me to this beautiful young lady who is an art handler, a gallery, works in a gallery, and, you know, and I was introduced to her, and I could be her grandmother probably. And she sort of said to me, "Oh, what kind of abstract art do you do?" Like, in such a condescending way that you're like, okay, bitch. No. But, you know, it was sort of like, this is exactly the sort of, you know, and I don't mean to, I mean, I'm sure there are beautiful gallery owners out there, but there's a sort of persona and a way of being in that arena that can be off-putting to, you know, we can dress up. I can be, you know, Miss Designer and look all swanky, believe it or not, I can. but I'm still more intimidated by the people that I've met in those situations. And one of my really good friends in San Francisco, we worked in a gallery. She's adorable, and you know, so I don't mean to generalize, but it was just that conversation on Saturday, and I just was like, how many kind of abstract art is there then? Because abstract is, you know, kind of abstract. And she sort of looked at me as I was a piece of dirt on her shoe and turned around and walked away. So you know, it's just that there's a sort of arrogance that comes with a lot of art knowledge, I think, in some situations, which can be off-putting.
And I think that's the whole elitist over, you know, where do those two worlds sort of like meet, and should they meet? As there's space for both of them? And also the fact that I find it an interesting question speaks to how I see it, because there must be some part of me that believes it's there, that believes it's relevant. I don't know, that's the questioning that's going on in my head. Am I a real artist if I don't blah, 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 blah? You know, there's all those.
Oh, really? You still ask yourself that, Deni?
Oh, I think I ask myself all of those questions every day. They'll come up in one shape or another, just like, you know, they always come back. Like, we started this conversation, Liz, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying this, because it's you said, God, I feel like, you know, like I'm back in the beginning, and I'm, you know,
forgotten how to paint.
Yeah. And I get there a lot of just like, what? I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I'm just in this big question mark, probably because, you know, I paint something and then there's that question of, am I in there? You know, am I in there? And then when I try to put me in there, it ends up looking like shit. And I'm like, it's this constant, you know,
And I don't think that ever changes. You know, that's what keeps us coming back for more. It's sort of intoxicating and repelling at the same time, isn't it? It's sort of really, yeah. But what makes one feel a real artist? I feel I mean, I'm an artist. I know I'm an artist. It took me a long time, actually. I remember sitting in the parking lot of this complex where I am, and there's 60 artists here. It's a old Johnson Johnson bandage factory, and I used to drop my son off, and he would come and work with this beautiful artist, Mona Brady. And I'd sit in the parking lot going, oh, I'm not a designer. I'm a designer. I'm not an artist. I would never be able to paint, but I'd love to be able to paint, but I'm a designer. I'm not an artist. And I think that was bred into us at art school as well. You know, I remember looking at the fine artists and thinking, God, they're all up their own asses. And, you know, we're the commercial ones. We're going to be getting a job. And there was a real divide in my art school anyway, between them and between us. But now I eat humble pie and completely, you know, admire them being able to even do that at that age. But what makes, you know, how can we, at what stage are we able to own that sentence, I am an artist? I was talking to a really sweet lady today who wants to come and do one of my workshops, and she's like, but I'm not an artist, and I just like playing, and I don't, you know, it's a bit intimidating. I don't want, you know, to do too hard things. I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist, she kept saying. And so if that word is intimidating, you just say I'm creative, right? I'm a creative. That sort of covers a whole load of, you know, of
do you think it's important for that word to have, you know, say you look at, I'm a doctor, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a musician, or, you know, is there a place that you step over where it makes it true, you know, or is it just something that we need self-belief for? What's your thoughts on that?
You answered that first. What do you think?
You know, I think being an artist is a practice as opposed to place. Like, it's, if I could say I'm an artist and then never actually do anything. So I think it's a practice. I need to show up. I need to be putting and I'm answering this on spot. This is I need to be putting myself out there. And I believe, and this is a belief at the moment that can change too, that art needs to be put out into the world.
Yeah.
To be an artist, I need to be vulnerable enough to show that part of out there. I think that there's something in that sharing and that connection that happens between someone
really
and your art.
So say if you were, you know, locked away in your beautiful studio looking out over the river or wherever, and in the middle of nowhere, and you really didn't care about selling your art, but you were creating every day and showing up, you wouldn't say they were an artist? Or
gosh, and then, like I say, this could change, but right now in my brain, I feel like there needs to be a connection between your art and the viewer.
I understand. Yeah, and showing up and being vulnerable.
Yeah, and it's that bit of putting yourself out into the world that changes things. It's like there's something in that moment that is, I think it's the exchange with the world, or the generosity in serving in some way, that I think is really important. I think it's actually one of the most important things of being an artist, is that the sharing piece, because it's putting something out into the world to get an energetic reaction. That is like, it's like if a tree, what's that saying about if a tree falls over in the woods, something in the woods, did it really happen? What's that saying? If a something in the woods, I can't believe I can't think of it. I'm going to put it down there because it's really important. But my brain, I'm sorry, I don't ever remember things at the time. But it's like, does it really happen unless some people see it? Unless there's a connection between one and the other, the relationship between art and viewer. And yes, I know it does, but then can I call myself an artist if I'm not brave enough to show it?
Right. Well, I mean, bravery is one thing. Intention or is another, right? If you're just purely doing it as your own medicine or your own soul's fodder, then that does feel very indulgent and very selfish. I'm sure there must be people out there that aren't bothered about ever showing their work. I can't imagine why you would produce a piece and never want to show it. But yeah, I don't know that there's a I haven't really thought much about this subject before we brought this up, but it's fascinating, right? It's really, but I'm very proud. And actually it was lovely. My son was introducing me at this wedding, and my mum's an artist, and it was what I'm fascinated to get the response of what that means to people when you say you're an artist. They can either completely clam up and they'll say, I was really terrible at art school and that's it. Or somebody kind of like looks at you as though you're a little bit of a anomaly, that you don't quite know, you're not necessarily what you see on the surface. So I always find it quite fascinating when I bring that into the equation. If somebody asks me what I do, then I'll tell them. I don't normally ask people what they do on purpose. I don't necessarily like that because it's defining, and I don't care what they do. I want to know who they are. But that's where we can't separate. I am an artist. It is who I am. It is my life. It's what, we're both, it's how we show up in the world. So we can't separate those two things. So
yeah, I think that's what was the game changer for me when I realized that I'm here to do this. How people react to it, because I still see that other people needing to see my work is important, but I'm here to do this regardless. I can feel that I am an artist, and when I got that sense of, oh, this is an intrinsic part of who I am, that was when I was able to really embrace that. Not to say that question doesn't still come playing on my mind with imposter syndrome and all those other things that pop up. But I think when I realized it was actually part of my heart and soul.
Yeah. If there was only one more day left in this world, would you paint? I don't know that. Yeah. I mean, if given a choice of loads of different things to do, I will nearly always. It's sort of almost a little. I'm conscious of trying to do more things, because my immediate reaction would be, oh, go to the studio. I can go to the studio. I've got a day in the studio. So I'm trying to really say yes to more things and get out a little bit more, because it's really important to expand ourselves. I find where I'm at right now is I'm actually a little bit too narrow. I've invested so much time and so wonderfully, hardly slept for 4 years of doing this and thrown myself hook, line and sinker in it. But I really do need to be, I want to be able to be stimulated by a lot of other things, as well as relationships and what's going on in the world. So I have to spread my wings a little bit more and compromise my time here. I also need to sleep a little bit more now, which is important.
It is. I feel the same way. I went through this, I don't know, probably decade of doing a lot of different modalities and groups and group work and retreats and all sorts of stuff, meditation. And then when I really got seriously into my art practice, that all went, and everything was filled. Like everything that filled, art then took the place of. And I so hear you that you get obsessed with it. It's like,
yes,
I can do art over pretty much anything.
Yes, when you're an artist when that happens, I guess, right? Yeah.
Do
you have go on?
The saying, it's if a tree is in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? So it's like, does there need to be an interaction in order for something to happen, in order for it to be there, in order for it to be? it's quite an interesting thought concept. Sorry, I stopped you there, Liz. I just had to get that bit in because it sounded so.
No, well done. That's fine. I'm renowned for getting all my sayings wrong because I can never remember what they are. So well done. Yeah, that's a good saying. I've never heard that one before. Yeah. But we'd love to hear if anybody has any feelings about it. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And I certainly speak for myself. I kind of we're talking just off the top of our heads. So if we say anything that's upsetting to anyone, I'm sorry, but this is an honest, open conversation between Deni and I, and it's just our personal opinion on things. So
absolutely,
we'd love to know what yours are.
And we're first time on YouTube. I still probably post a little bit to Insta, and you can go through to the YouTube channel for the whole talk.
That's great.
Next week.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you. They're beautiful questions you ask. I don't know whether I answered any of them, but thank you for all your questions. You're so good at asking. Well done. Thank you, Deni. I promise to have more to fire at you next time.